Ow. Well, we got to go to 8. That'll be our last one. All right, welcome back to the garage, everyone. So in my long-term test to find out where the slightly rough idle is coming from, I decided to go ahead and do a leak down test. So if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a test to determine if you have any valves which are not seating properly, burnt valves, or if there are leaky piston rings, or if there is a leaky head gasket. Basically, you're trying to figure out if everything in the engine is sealed up correctly. So what we have here is a El Cheapo leak down tester that I got from Hobo Freight. It is right there. It's got a couple of gauges on it. This is your air regulator. This is the output to the engine. This is the input from your air supply. This is the pressure rating coming from your air supply. This is the pressure rating as read inside the motor. But we'll talk more about that as we get on into the test. So that's the main part of the testing unit. The other part is the hose here. This end will screw into the spark plug hole. I had to put this adapter on here, which goes into my compression tester because the tool did not come with the proper size fitting for the plugs on this Cadillac big block. And this is a simple pneumatic fitting which goes into the tool itself. All right, so a few steps you're going to need to do to prepare for this test. One is you will need to warm the engine up to operating temperature so that when you get down in here and start working all over the place, you burn your knuckles. Guess what? That's not going to happen. I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. You'll need to open up your throttle all the way. So I took the spring off, put a pair of pliers there, opened it up, put a screwdriver down the choke plate, and so on and so forth. All the spark plugs have been removed. I took the coil wire off, took my distributor cap off, and I marked with a black Sharpie all the way around the exterior of the distributor housing where the plugs are. Took my fan off. It's not a clutch fan, so it doesn't spin. So you need to take that off and get it out of the way because you're going to need to turn the engine over. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn the engine over to the compression stroke on each cylinder. Say it's number 1, right? You get to top dead center. So that now means that both of the valves are closed. And then you're going to take this tool and you're going to pressurize that cylinder. If the cylinder is okay, you will see a slight difference in the pressure over here on the cylinder side. So this is, if this is 80, you might see, it might say 70, right? Because it's not going to be perfect. Or let's say there's a leak, right? So this pressure will be significantly less. Let's say it's 10 or 20 or something like that. So then you're going to look for missing air. Where is the air going? Okay, well, if it's coming out of a poorly seated intake valve, it's going to be coming out of the carburetor. Okay, that's the reason why you've got the throttle plates open. If it is a poorly seated exhaust valve, it's going to be coming out of the exhaust pipe. So go to the back of the car and see if you can hear air coming out. If it is a head gasket failure, you're going to come over here to the radiator where I have the cap off and look down in there and see if you can see bubbles coming up through the coolant. And let's hope we don't see that. I don't think we will, but that's part of the inspection. So my distributor is pretty close to 1. It's right there. 1 is right there. So I'm going to go ahead and get my, my wrench is already on the motor. So let's go ahead and turn the engine over to number 1 and get ready to do the first cylinder. All right, that should be right on number 1. So let's set up over here. Number 1 on the Cadillac motor is on the passenger corner. And we'll slip our tool up in there. If we can get it threaded, there we go. The hex head on the tool is an 11/16, so I'm just going to give that a little snug. It doesn't have to be hugely tight. So let's go ahead and hook that up. Let me get my air supply. All right, let's go ahead and put some air in this cylinder now. I've read on forums And the recommendation was, oh, just use 100. It's good for the math. It's easy to remember. Whatever. That's stupid. If you put more than 50 or 60 pounds of pressure in this motor, you can't hold it. Okay, you'd need to have a wrench on the crankshaft with a breaker bar sticking out of here. You cannot hold it unless you have a helper, you know, on the breaker bar. It just won't happen. Ask me how I know. So I'm going to go with, say, about 30 pounds of pressure. That is perfectly adequate. There's no reason to pump a whole bunch of air into this thing. 30 psi will do what you need to do. You're just checking for leaks. That's my opinion. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. Put it in the comment down below and we'll chat about it. But right now I've got this thing on top dead center on number 1. I'm going to go ahead and put 30 psi in the cylinder. Adjust the regulator like that. And I'm showing about 18 on this gauge. Basically there's some leakage. There's always going to be leakage. The cylinder is not perfect. It's not a perfect air compressor, right? So there's going to be some leakage past the rings, past the valves. But what you're looking for is a significant leak, and you can hear the air. I don't hear anything coming out of the carburetor. If you wanted to, you could take the line off of the brake booster and see if you could find air coming out over there. You're going to check for bubbles here in the coolant. There's nothing in there. I've already actually done this once on cylinder number 1, and there's nothing coming out of the exhaust pipe. So I already know that cylinder number 1 is okay. Basically, the test on cylinder number 1 is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the air down all the way. Disconnect that, dispel any latent pressure. I'm going to remove that line, and we're going to put it on the next cylinder, which I believe is 5 according to the firing order. Since I don't have it memorized, shame on me. I should have it memorized. Yeah, it is 5. Okay, I'm going to move this line over to number 5, which is second one back from the rear over there, and we'll do another test. There's going to be some leakage at the connector at the spark plug hole too, so there's another source of air leakage. But as long as you understand that, that's knowing is half the battle. All right, let's get over to number 5 here on the firing order. That should be it. If not, we'll tweak it a little bit. Let's give it a little air. You can see this is on 30. And this is about on 18, about the same thing as number 1, really. Check the radiator. I'm going to check the exhaust pipe just to make sure. All right, number 6 is up next on the firing order. I ran past it a little bit when I was turning the motor, so I'm guessing that's going to be okay because those valves stay closed for a little while during the compression cycle. Let's see what happens. That one's a lot tighter, actually. 30 on my pressure and like 22. Or maybe I should run past it a little bit anyway. You know what I'm saying? So that might be, I may go back and retest those others because I was trying to get it spot on, but I ran past it this time, and I don't hear, I hear very little noise. So I'm calling that one good. I'm gonna go check the exhaust pipe real quick. All right, yep, 6 looks good to me. I'm gonna turn the air down and move on to our next cylinder, which is number 3. All right, I ran past it again a little bit on that one as well. Let's see what that does for us. That one's better. That one's like 24. 30 going in and 24 being held. So far, the first 2 were 18. But I was trying to get spot on the mark, but who knows whether I was, on it or not. So I went a little past it, and that both of the valves are fully closed at just past the combustion. So I think that's the ticket, that's the way to go. So this one sounds good. Cut the air down, move on to the next cylinder. All right, so we're going to be in number 4 here. All right, we should be on number 4 combustion cycle. Let's give her some air. Run it up to 30. My opinion is that 30 is more than adequate. Looking at about 18 or 19. That one's a little lower. Here's an interesting idea. Let's see what happens here. Let's just move it. Let's move the engine. I moved it a little bit. So actually I wasn't spot dead on, top dead center, because the pressure in the cylinder went up way up. It went to 26. Move the engine a little farther past top dead center to ensure that all the valves are closed, and I'm at 26, so that's the best one yet. Personally, I think the first couple that I started, I wasn't fully up on top dead center, so I'll go back and check those. But even with that, I didn't get any air out of the exhaust valve or out of the exhaust pipe at all. So, all right, let's move on to the next cylinder, which is number 2, which is this guy right here on the corner. All right, we should be on number 2 there. Let's give her some air. I'm on 30 and I'm looking at 24 PSI. I don't hear any air coming out of the carburetor. At 24, I'm sure I don't hear anything coming out of the exhaust either, but I'm going to check anyway. Nothing coming out of the exhaust. If I crank it to 40, what happens? I don't want to move the engine. If you get up pretty high, it'll move the engine. So I'm at 40, I'm reading 30 inside the cylinder. That's pretty good. Let's move on to the next cylinder. And that would be number 7, which is on the back side or the other side of the motor. All right, I ran a little past it, but I think that's what I want. All right, let's give her some air. We'll go to 40. Yep, got 34. It's about 6 down. It's about the same as the others. I don't see any issues with that. Let's move on to the next one. Are we done? Ow. Well, we got to go to 8. That'll be our last one. And let's move over to number 8 here. And that should be it. There's 30. We're looking at about 19. Let's move the engine a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, just ran a little past it. I'm on 30, but I'm sitting on 24. We'll run it up to 40. Make sure this cheater bar don't slam me in the mouth. Well, I ran it up to 45. Okay. 40, and I'm running at 34. That's perfectly fine. All right, so having determined, I'm not going to go back and check those others. On the first couple, I clearly was not all the way up to top dead center. I went to it and passed it a little bit. You could see where the pressure went up. All right, I wound it back around to 1 again. I'm going to redo 1 because that's before I started going past a smidgen past what I consider to be top dead center. Now keep in mind, I'm going off a Sharpie mark on the distributor housing, right? So, you know, that's we're not dealing with stellar accuracy here. We're just going with eyeball accuracy. So, but I ran it past it a little bit this time to make sure that the valves are closed. I'm going to 30. Says 18. Let's see what we got here. Let's keep going. No, that's going too far because I lost pressure. There we go. I just pulled it back just a smidgen. Got it back towards, I know you're not supposed to go backwards, but you know, a fraction ain't gonna hurt nothing. So I'm at 30 on the pressure going in, and I'm at 24 basically. So I just went back in there and made sure that I was square on top dead center and the valves are closed. So now I pumped it up to 40. I'm looking at 32. You know, that's fine. So that was the anomalies I saw at the beginning were simply poor practices on my part. So I think we're good. All right, so what did we learn? We went through each cylinder and did a leak down test. To review, if we put in about 30 PSI, we were looking at anywhere from 32 to 34 PSI on the cylinder pressure for each one, and an increase to 40 yielded a similar result on a percentage basis. At the beginning, I was not putting the cylinder at top dead center, so I decided to go to my mark, which is, who knows whether or not it's right or not, and a little past it, just to make sure that you're on top dead center and the valves are closed. And I got a good result each time. So now, where does that leave us with the idle issue? My initial thinking was there was a burnt exhaust valve. Based on this, it doesn't appear to be. Now, I didn't run it up to like 100 PSI. Is that going to be an issue? Is that going to be a factor in this? In other words, at 30 you won't detect the issue, or at 40 you won't detect the issue, but at 100 you will. The tool says not to exceed 100 PSI. Now, being a Chinese tool, that means don't exceed probably 80. Otherwise, it'll explode. Ask me how I know. I've had other cheap pneumatic tools explode on me if I ran them up to their quote-unquote maximum tolerable pressure. All right, so with the results of this leak down test, all of the cylinders appear to be in the same state. Where does that leave us with the idle? Assuming it's an internal issue, which I believe that it is, based on the dollar bill test on the exhaust pipe. Go back and look at one of my previous videos where I hold a piece of paper up against the exhaust pipe while the engine is idling, and it sucks the paper back up into the pipe every once in a while. In a single exhaust system, it should never do that. On my pickup truck, it doesn't do that. It just flutters back and forth. It never gets sucked up into the exhaust pipe on my 496 big block. That leaves us with lifters or cam, in my opinion. A cam would require basically ripping the engine apart like I just got through doing. Lifters would simply be removal of the intake manifold and the valve covers, which is not a huge deal. That is probably what I'm going to do in the near future. I'm probably going to take the intake manifold off in the near future and pull out each lifter one by one, inspect it, clean it, and replace it if necessary. And of course, we want to look at the bottom of the lifter for any kind of wear from the camshaft. If we find cam lobe wear, then I'll probably just put it back together and drive it. No, I won't do that. That would, I'd probably have to replace the camshaft and all of the lifters if that were the case. So, the investigation continues. All right, well, there you go. There's a leak down test for you. This is just part of my investigation into the slightly rough idle that we have here. This is just something that's been gnawing at me for quite some time, and I really wanted to try a leak down test, and I just wanted to go through the whole procedure with you from start to finish, and that's what we did today. All right, there you go. There's your leak down test on a Cadillac 472 big block. I appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. It's down inside that engine somewhere. I don't know where it is, but you'll find it. You'll find it eventually. Hey, by the way, I noticed that in my statistics, there are a lot of people that watch my videos that are not subscribed to the channel. If you would, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button for me. It would really help out my channel a lot. All right, folks, that's all for now. You guys have a good one, and remember to enjoy wrenching on your old classic car.